Today, you're in for a treat because I have the pleasure of interviewing EJ and Tarah Kerwin. Let me say that they have interviewed me on their really wonderful podcast, Relationship Renovation. And out of that conversation, as well as just enjoying the collaboration, I'm now really happy to interview the two of you and welcome you to the Intimate Marriage Podcast.
Thank you. We are
Thank you.
grateful to be here, curious, and just ready for this, whatever the next however long will be.
Okay, excellent. So that's kind of your signature, isn't it? The kind of openness and presence. I really love that. So I want to be really clear that I will be in more of a coach role rather than only an interview role during this conversation. But while you're listening, I want you to know that EJ and Tarah are professionals. EJ is a licensed professional counselor and Tarah is a licensed marriage and family therapist. They both specialize in couples therapy. They met while working at another counseling facility, fell in love, got married, and are currently raising a blended family together. We're going to say a little bit more about that. And just from the outset, I want to encourage you to have a listen to their podcast and to say how deeply I admire and respect that with your training as a therapist and a counselor and specializing in couples counseling, you have chosen to be so vulnerable and use your own marriage as a gift for anyone who wants to improve theirs. There's a certain kind of humility and depth that are required for that, because the fact is that most couples coaches and especially therapists and counselors, they want you to think their marriage is magnificent. They've worked it out, and that and their training is what gives them the moral authority to guide others. Will each of you say how you actually think about it to provide more context for this conversation? Because you do it in a way that's so different.
Well, I mean, I want to jump in because this is, I've learned a lot in my relationship with Tara, but on the clinical side, this is something that I gained a tremendous amount in working with her and being closer in this capacity, is that I was much more of sort of a closed book therapist when we first got together, kind of blank slate, didn't share a lot about myself. And then when we started co-facilitating couples counseling, Tara really pushed me a little bit, and then just was herself. And what I realized early on was that that's a huge component that really creates a lot of safety for couples. In that we're very upfront that we struggle like anyone else. That the lessons we talk to them about and the interventions are things that we're still figuring out, and that we're always stumbling over. And so I learned a tremendous amount from working with Tara in how much, appropriate levels of sharing really helps couples quite a bit.
Well, and then for me, I knew I wanted to be a marriage counselor when I was 4 years old. I didn't know that's quite what you called it. And so in grad school, I think I've been doing couples counseling since I was 22 years old. I've always loved doing it. And when EJ and I met and we fell in love, and, he had his two boys, they were 2 and 4, I think, when we got married. I had kind of had like a chill life, like hanging out in my own 3-bedroom condo. I had a, very successful private practice with couples, and, just doing my little emotionally focused therapy with couples. And then when we got pregnant with twins on our honeymoon, so I quickly went from 0 to 4 kids in about a year and a half. And I had no idea. I've talked with couples about transitions and early and parenting, but I hadn't been in it. And so when we went through that first year, and again, twins had colic, it was very difficult. I was very overwhelmed. And I said, EJ, whatever is happening right now, this is what we're going to do. We are opening up a couples counseling center when we get through this, and we are going to help all these other couples, because here are two people that have a ton of knowledge, have always had good communication. wonderful intimacy, very connecting, to total breakdown in every single area. And so we were like reading every book. We were going through every theoretical orientation. We had to survive because we knew we loved each other. And so for me, that's like, taking that clinical piece and then bringing our own personal, I kind of call it the train wreck that has now turned into this amazing blessing. Like it was all supposed to happen this way. It was supposed to happen this way.
I really appreciate how you've described that, because I think anyone who's in a really difficult marriage, or what I want to say is a really difficult phase of marriage, that can be so complicated for that person's identity. It's like, who are they when their marriage isn't going well, when they think of themselves as someone who is competent and able to have a good marriage? But then on top of that, you're both coaching and therapizing and counseling couples on how to have a great marriage. It gets at the identity at a whole other level. It's like identity challenge on steroids. And so I think that says something so beautiful, both about your love and, honestly, Tarah, just how you move through life, that in the midst of it, you would turn to EJ and say, once we're on the other side, we're opening a center so we can help everyone else with this.
Not even on the other side. Like when we figure this out-ish, we're always growing and changing. But yes.
Well, that's like the feedback loop of therapy also that's been wonderful for us, is that, we talk about things with individuals, and then in the back of my mind, I hear this nagging thing saying like, I really sucked at this yesterday. Like I did a really poor job of that. But it reminds me also of, like, a lot of times I walk out of those sessions going like, I gotta like double down. I gotta really work on my mindfulness around this, because I can't just be like, spouting this and espousing this to a couple and then go home and not embrace it and figure it out on my own.
Yeah, I am with you so much. I will never forget the first couple that I coached. It was the first time in a professional context that I really was in the sacred, intimate space of being with a couple the way they are with one another, more so than ever before for either of them, and more so than ever before for me. It's totally different talking with a friend about what's going on in her relationship. So anyway, I was coaching. I believe I kept a professional face, but inside, I was just shocked at how disrespectfully she spoke to him. I had no question that they really loved one another. They really cared. They wanted to communicate successfully. But the way she said, well, he's not, I don't even remember what the particulars are, but I just remember thinking, this is what love looks like. And not even a breath afterwards, in the back of my head, I thought, oh, this is how I talk to my husband. And I came to realize he had told me how I was disrespectful. And for me, maybe I was, maybe I wasn't, but it just wasn't a big deal. And then witnessing this woman be disrespectful with total unconsciousness about it really opened up this whole, felt like a trap door. But once I fell in, it was like one of those fairy tales where actually there was a whole adventure, and I found some incredibly wonderful terrain. So I'm just saying that I really relate to that. And I think it's important for those of us who are helping couples to be honest with ourselves in this way.
Okay. I can't tell you how many times, really quickly, where we're in arguments and I'm like, EJ, why can't you just practice what you say to our couples when we're in session? Because you say it so beautifully to them. We have been caught in that conversation so many times.
Okay, so how do you answer that question, either one of you? Why is it different with one another versus what you're genuinely able to facilitate for others?
I mean, for me, it's just that it's no one sees me like Tarah sees me. Nobody has probably the access to touch and trigger, sort of my deepest suffering, and because when we're hit into that place of really deep suffering, we really lose the ability to act intentionally. And so everywhere else, I'm pretty good at, especially myself, where I'm a pretty like measured individual. Like everywhere else, I'm able to kind of basically keep my shit together. And with Tara, she's like the one person that I struggle to do that.
Thank you.
That's right, because the two of you have enough perspective to know what an amazing expression of love that is.
It
Yeah,
is. It is.
absolutely.
I adore her. I adore her, and I, and when I do fall short, I feel horrible about it. But I also have this like righteous indignation also that will like rear its head. That's not helpful at all. It's not loving. It's not caring. It's not the partner I want to be.
And yet there it is. Okay, so how old are your twins?
They just turned 9.
Okay, amazing. So what had you perk up in hearing about uncompromising intimacy and what might be of interest for the two of you? What's the ongoing context?
Well, I would say since the twins were born, absolutely. Maybe a little bit before that because of, just like EJ transitioning from his divorce to a new relationship, like intimacy was just, it was a little different. But ever since the twins were born, I had overwhelm. My nervous system had overwhelm in a way that I had never experienced ever. And then so 0 to 4 kids, and EJ kind of took over my intensive clients I was having at that time. So he would really be gone all day, and I would be there at the house with all 4 kids, like hating him. Like I did not sign up for this. I had no idea, but I knew I loved him. But so this resentment, this overwhelm, it just shut me down completely sexually. I was nursing every hour. I'm like, don't even look at my boob. Like, don't even go near it. Like, it's getting bitten and it's awful and I hate it. So I just became a whole different person. And I definitely also struggled with postpartum, which I look back now, none of my providers were like, oh, you might have had postpartum, but I was thinking horrible thoughts. Like I was carrying the twins in laundry baskets, thinking I would drop them and they would bleed out. Like it was just really intense. And so that changed the way I saw EJ, because I always thought like, oh, well, he's got 2 kids. Like he knows how to do this parenting thing. Like I'd never really been around kids. I'd never changed a diaper. And actually, no, that's not the case, because twins, and they both had colic, that was the part that was really hard. So they would scream for like 13 to 18 hours a day, and they did not sleep for 9 months at all. And so, my overwhelm turned to EJ, and that's where I remember, like, we had our first date a year after the twins were born. Number one mistake, but nobody else could handle these twins. And I remember I was like, oh my gosh, EJ is going to want to have sex afterwards. Like, I can't do that. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want anything. Like, I just remember that first date on Valentine's Day, 2015. And we went out and I felt all this pressure, and it hasn't changed since. I mean, we're working on it. I work on it. We've done a ton of shifts around expectations and my guilt and all of this, but it just I never went back to this. My story was like, I'm exhausted. And even though fast forward 9 years later, well, when the twins turned 1, we started building our business. We were working 70, 80 hours a week up until just this year. And so I don't think the feeling of overwhelm has left my body in order for me to really open up my body sexually again, to whatever that means. It's like a rebirth that I feel like I haven't had time for yet. So yeah, that's my.
Thank you. Thank you so much. How is it for you to say that, Tara?
It's just really sad because I know that I'm a really fun, exciting person and sensual too. And it just feels like that part has left my body completely. And I think there's a component. So I had extensive childhood sexual abuse. That I go to therapy every weekend. But I don't think that I could even start to process that until like it kind of it came out, like a few years ago. I didn't even know, like I had no idea because it was around 4 years old. And so I think when that happened, I'm so happy I know it makes sense of everything because I used to think that people loved me through sex, like, oh, if I can just give them enough. And so it's like I'm kind of emerging with a whole new identity, but it's scary because it's like so unknown. And everything I thought like sex was has changed for me significantly. And EJ's been amazing at creating safety, allowing me to do that. But it's kind of like I was robbed of all of that my whole life. And what I thought was like good sex was me just actually thinking that's how people loved me, which I know that's not true now. So it was sad, but I'm also very excited for my new healing and growing through it, however that looks.
And I think it's this blend of so much courage and so much uncertainty
Yeah.
that really defines the path for quite a while. And how is it for you, EJ, to hear what Tarah has said?
Yeah, a mixture of like a lot of pride. I've seen her go through, everything from the taking on a family in a extremely rapid way and being an amazing, loving, just like sort of like, light in the world, so I'm like really proud of like I know all this work that she's been doing around the trauma, so I'm very proud. I'm sad like that, I think of her as a little girl and everything she went through. It's really makes me sad, makes me really angry at some people. Um and then on the side of just our relationship, hopeful, um sometimes like a little powerless, like um trying to figure out how to be the best partner for you in going through this, and maybe some like guilt in maybe ways I dealt with it early on, and just like frustration and getting kind of caught up into my own narrative around it. Yeah, like a lot. Like a lot of feelings, but mostly a lot of love.
Mm. Well, and so when we had you on our podcast and you said uncompromising, I was thinking about that because I think we've been going through this. Like EJ felt bad because he's like, oh gosh, she has my children and we had twins, and like I'm the one that wanted children. I was like, yeah, it could if it happens, okay. And so I think he was always like trying to compromise, and then I would feel his like kind of you said it's like cutting off pieces of yourself, and then I would feel all of this shame, like oh my God, like and then is he gonna leave me? Like is someone like he deserves to be with someone who just wants to like devour him up because he's such a great human, and so like we just have always been this like not that uncompromising piece, like not sharing ourselves because we've been so afraid. And then once the trauma came up, like that was even like, that was pretty recently in the last couple of years, that was even like, now what? Because, but we try to talk about it all of the time. But I really liked what you said about that, like just share what it is that you're feeling like, honey, I want to jump your bones right now. And I can be like, thank you for that. Like right now, I'm kind of feeling totally numb in my body, but I love that you can just be you and tell me that you want to like devour me. Great.
Yeah, actually, I'd love to give you a tool. I, of course, have no idea if it's one that you're very familiar with and use in your practice or if this would be something new. But in the context that you've described, where there's been so much complication, I'll just say, and there's the complication for you, Tara, in your evolution as an individual and as a wife and as a mother, and the evolution for you, EJ, as an individual, as a husband, as a father. In fact, before I'll just finish that sentence to be clear. I want to give you a way to just have more connection without altering either one's experience, which is another way of talking about being uncompromising. But before we do, and I'm guessing with this topic, it's more common than not, but I feel like we haven't really presenced your experience, EJ, enough. Like we've presenced how you have navigated Tara's experience, obviously not completely, but enough to have a flavor of that. But if I were speaking with you and Tara weren't present, for example, I'm just saying that to give you permission or to indicate I'm inviting you to just say, like, what's it like to have to be sexually attracted to an incredible woman you love who loves you and has a life with you, and yet it's so complicated.
I mean, uh, it's been pretty like lonely and discouraging and feeling unwanted, unloved, unliked at times. Yeah, it's been very like isolative. It's like I don't want to, it's not, even though like we've talked about being open and sharing what's going on in our lives, and we I guess I feel like I guard it, and this is wrapped up to who I am too, but I guard it more than Tara, and I guard it for some of my own like, maybe shame, like feeling like if I was whatever, that then she would feel those things, and that it's been hard not to personalize it, and not because just in there's other people in Tara's past that we talk about, other people she's dated and stuff where I just know that she didn't have any of these problems with. And so it's just been, a lot of rejection. I think that's the big thing. And then not knowing like how much can I tell her that, because I know how bad she feels at times about it, and not wanting to make her feel worse or interrupt her, you know, her process of healing. And so it's like really just like, kind of like isolative and lonely.
And it's understood for both of you that regardless of any inclination, you both wouldn't actually want Tara to be having sex in order for you to feel better in this way.
No,
That you
absolutely.
both are devoted to desire driven experiences. Okay. How is that for you to hear, Tara? Was there anything new in there?
Just like proud that he is, expressing his feelings. And he kind of comes from a more avoidant attachment. And just like when I hear him express feelings, it makes me actually feel closer to him. And I think he used to think like, oh, I don't want to rock the boat, so I won't share. So I just like love hearing all of his big emotions, even if they're uncomfortable for me. And I'm like, oh, but yeah, I'm just proud of him, I guess.
I'm in awe of each of you just to share that. And so, what I'd love to invite you to do, this is something that anytime there's something happening or not happening, and it's really impacting the relationship, but each person has a very different experience.
Mhm.
And so when one person speaks about it, it's just very challenging in conversation to have room for both of those experiences in a way that honors them. So one of the ways that I like to do that is through dyads. Is that something you're familiar with?
Mhm.
A little bit, yeah.
So I usually, when a couple isn't finding their way to talk about something so well, which isn't your situation, I'm just knowing that other people are listening. I want to make this more broadly applicable. That, like, if a couple just isn't connecting that much at all, I don't mean sexually, I just mean in conversation either, that it can be really helpful to do a dyad, which consists of one person asking the same question multiple times and the other person answering it each time in the same way, but more often in different ways. So I sometimes will have couples just say, "How was your week?" And then the person will say, "Well, it was super busy and I was really annoyed by my coworker because of this, that, and the other thing." And then the first person says, "Thank you. How was your week?"
Hmm.
And then the other person gives their answer. And it's really it's surprising to people, especially couples who are both ambitious, hardworking, on the go, and tend to be good at problem solving and efficient, at least in other areas of their life, how just the same simple question, by the fourth time it's asked, there's a much more genuine, deeper response. Not that the earlier answers are insincere, there's just room for something to emerge. So, first of all, is that something you two do with one another?
So I do this a lot with my individual or couples, and we do that. Who are you? Who are you? And and it starts to keep getting deeper and deeper. But have we ever done that with you?
I think we tried it like a while ago.
No, we have not.
Okay, well, I would love just right now to have you do that. Not how was your week, although I want to be very clear that with every tool that I teach, I always want people to start at a simple level on a benign topic to really become comfortable with the tool before going into more complicated territory. But I don't think the two of you need to start at that level. What if just right now, with just, let's say 3 times, EJ, you ask Tarah, "How do you feel about intimacy right now?" Or I don't know, it needs to be a question you want to ask. And by right now, I don't mean, "How do you feel about having sex right now?" What I mean is, like, how are you feeling about intimacy?
Okay.
And so you'll ask that question, and Tara, you'll give your answer. And the only response you'll give, EJ, is "Thank you." Then you take a breath and ask the question again. And in you responding with "thank you," you're saying, "I hear you. I receive what you say." You want to face one another and look in one another's eyes. And all you're really doing is hearing it. And just to be clear, there's no discussion afterwards. This isn't a way to find things and then process them through conversation. If Tara says something that she wants to refer to later, great, you can do that, Tara. But if Tara says something and EJ, you want to clarify, you want to explain yourself, you want to make sure she didn't misunderstand. No, this is without any kind of follow up. It's just a witnessing of what arises when this happens.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's have you start, EJ, with, and it's the same question every time, but phrase it in a way that, since it's about intimacy, that is appropriate for how the two of you speak with one another.
Tara, how do you feel about intimacy right now?
I feel scared.
Thank you. Tara, how do you feel about intimacy right now?
I feel curious.
You can say more if you want, Tara. If you feel complete, that's okay, but say whatever arises. It doesn't need to just be one word or whatever.
I feel curious about what could be for me and us and hopeful. And yeah,
Tara, how do you feel about intimacy right now?
I feel a little a little nervous that like the feelings won't come back to my body, but I also know that that's just where I'm at right now because I felt so numb for so long. But hopeful with that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, and you can switch in the other direction.
EJ, how do you feel about our intimacy right now?
Feel, I feel hopeful. I feel more connected to you recently than I think we've been. Feel hopeful.
Thank you. EJ, how do you feel about our intimacy right now?
Mm. Feel a little lonely too. Um, feel I feel like it's sort of this hanging back feeling, and I don't feel great about that because I also know that that's not helpful, and so conflicted. Like I get conflicted. Like I don't know whether to move forward, to move back, to stay put. A little confused.
Thank you. EJ, how do you feel about our intimacy right now?
Excited because I feel, I feel like uh, things are. We've done a lot of work around knowing how to be like present for each other in ways that we haven't been in the past, and so I feel like emotionally, in some ways, our intimacy is better maybe than it's ever been.
Mm,
So excited to see like how much closer we can get to one another.
thank you.
How was that?
It was, it was good. A little nervous, just like the eye contact and talking about something that is so vulnerable with each other. But it also felt very like, yeah, we got this shit. We've gotten through so much. We got this. Let's go. Let's do this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same as Tara, like a little nervous. Um, I never ever want to hurt her. And so I I always have that like in the back of my mind, but I also know from she's told me over and over and over, just be honest, be true. And so again, it's that whole thing of like moving forward, moving backwards, stay put of like I feel like I feel discombobulated as well.
Well, is there a question you have that you want to ask Tara in order to feel more settled? I mean, there's like stirring things up, which happens as they evolve, but I don't know that discombobulated is what we're aiming for.
Yeah. I guess I guess I would want to know like when I said that we're like the closest we've been emotionally maybe or the safety we have, like do you feel the same way?
Oh yeah, it's amazing. You kind of coming out of your avoidant piece and me coming out of my anxious piece has been, yeah, it's been great. I don't think I could be doing the work I'm doing in my own therapy with my, trauma that has like poured out. If you wouldn't have be doing what you're doing to create the emotional safety. And I think I said that. I said if we don't have this emotional safety, like I can't do this because it's gonna wreck me. like we will be wrecked at this. And so it just kind of put us up a little bit on like a fast paced, like, okay, how do we get rid of this? Like, how do I just start to share my feelings and not keep it all to myself? And I used to call EJ, like, sorry, a Buddhist motherfucker. Because I'd be like, what the fuck? Just get mad, do something. And then we would have these fights, and I would be like, God, makes me feel like this is when I feel really close to you. But it would take like so much to get there, and months or even years of like even getting, to me to connect with EJ from his feelings. And so, yes, I absolutely, a long answer to your question. Yes, I do feel very emotionally safe with you. And so that's why I feel like I don't think I would have said yes to Alexandra to this if I didn't. So yes, absolutely. Thank you for asking that.
Thank you for telling me.
Yeah, there's such a widespread phenomenon of conflict-free, passion-free relationships, although like there's so much more at play with the two of you. Okay, so I want to just think for a moment, because what I really want to do is also a touch exercise, but I want to be really respectful. You're in therapy, Tarah, and if anything that I'm about to say isn't something, you might be nervous because this is new territory, and plus you don't know what I'm about to say, but that if you have lean in, then let's go for it at a gentle pace. And if you're like, actually, this isn't the right move for me right now, I just respect that, and we don't need to unpack that any further. Is that good? Okay. So I think one of the things that really gets in the way of pleasure and passion, especially when it comes to respectful, caring, kind couples, is this idea of, it's not exactly parity or equality, but kind of like you want your partner to feel good while you feel good. And actually, that's an extremely advanced level of play when it comes to sex. Like the position 69 it's just so challenging to be able to both receive pleasure and give pleasure with full presence and erotic giving and receiving energy. And so instead, a way to actually be much more gratified through touch, and you are both fully clothed, and I'm not gonna be with you when that's not the case. So this is going to be fully clothed, and it's not even really going to be sexual touch that we're talking about right now. But I would love if, EJ, you could just roll your long sleeve up to your elbow, one of them. Again, I'm going to guide you through it, but I just, without tripping over myself, every step of the way, I'm asking for you to consensually agree. And if either one of you don't, then you just please say so. So the first step is I'd love for you, Tarah, to ask EJ if he's okay with you touching him.
Are you okay with me touching you?
Yes.
Okay. Then go ahead, Tarah, and just touch his forearm. And anyone on YouTube, let's have it so that we can actually see your forearm. Will you? Yeah, okay. Well, I want you to be relaxed. So yeah, okay, that's good. And so while you're touching that, Tarah, where is your attention? Are you focused on what will feel good to him?
Completely.
Okay, so stop touching him for a moment. And I want you, EJ, not to have to hold your arm up, so you can be completely relaxed. So never mind having it in view. Okay. Yeah, okay. So Tarah, what I'd like you to do, yeah, so Tarah, you just gently rubbed and touched with your fingertips on EJ's arm with attention on what would feel good for him. So now I want you to take your hand off of him so you're not touching him. And actually, you could even close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. But I want you to connect with your own body, Tarah. And your job, EJ, is just to be available, along for the ride, enjoying yourself, learning, but you don't have a particular focus other than to be open. And for you, Tarah, how do you feel when you are just focused on your own body right now?
I feel calm and grateful, present.
Wonderful. So when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. And let me give all the instruction before you do anything, but I'd love for you to take your hand and touch EJ's forearm, but your priority is to stay connected with yourself, with that calm, grateful feeling. And the way that you touch him is entirely what feels good to you. If I'm not expecting it, I'm just saying this to make my point. If it would feel good to you to pinch him, then you can pinch him. Do not be focused on, for him, this is you taking your pleasure with whatever pressure, with whatever pace, whatever feels really good to you, without ever breaking connection, maintaining the connection with yourself more than any, like, no attention on him. And so she's gently touching his fingertips. It actually looks like it feels really delicious. And kind of longer strokes and shorter strokes. It feels more exploratory than the first time. And like you're much more alive in your hand, honestly. So you can continue to do that, or not, as you wish, Tarah, but I would like to know, what did you experience in those two different ways of touching?
So the first one just felt, yeah, my experience was on EJ, like, oh, God, I haven't touched him. We'll be touching, we hold hands and stuff, but like mindful touch. I'm like, he is just having a ball right now. Like literally like what his experience was. And then when it kind of went back to me, I know like one of my favorite places to be touched is right on my wrist lightly, and I just love the feeling of it. And so I was kind of getting pleasure through that. And I also love like squeezing fingertips because I feel like it squeezes out like stress. And that's what I was, yeah, it just felt very like, yeah, I'm doing this for me. And I felt very connected to it.
Yeah, and you look brighter. I mean, your face literally looks brighter.
Yeah.
EJ, what did you notice in the two touches?
The second one just felt way more connected. It felt like way more intentional. Yeah.
And would you say more enjoyable, or is that taking it too far?
No, yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, it felt like it went on longer. It just felt really nice.
Okay, wonderful. Well, if we were in a longer coaching session, I would have you do that in the opposite direction as well. I'm not going to do that right now, and the two of you can decide if that is safe in your context or not. But I want to say that, especially for a man, this can be very tricky, because we all know in society the memes of the selfish man, the man who wants to be good but doesn't know any better, rather than to approach touch and pleasure based on what feels good to him. But a man in your situation, EJ, who has a lot of love and you'd like to express it sexually, and that isn't really an open channel, we never take for granted that you're touching for your own pleasure. You're much more likely to be focused on what's going to work for Tarah every step of the way. And similar to expressing emotion and you expanding into bringing more of yourself, I want to invite you also with a forearm. Okay. This has nothing to do with genitals. This is about changing a dynamic in how you touch one another. And it absolutely can happen with the forearm or just the hand. And maybe if you really enjoy this, to advance to the face, but it doesn't have to be inherently sexual. There's a lot for both of you to learn doing it when you offer your arm, Tarah, and you do the touching, EJ. And to ask Tarah which she enjoys as well when you do that. We're not going to do it right now, but I just want to invite the two of you to make sure to do that with one another after we conclude.
I mean, it sounds nice. Is it okay if I
Please go ahead.
contextualize it? I mean, because I think one of our struggles or my struggles is that like I feel like almost any time I do touch, I think she's afraid that it's with like the purpose to get us someplace. And so the idea of doing something where it's absolutely not linked to that whatsoever would be really nice, because I love to touch Tarah. I mean,
yeah, and actually, if you specifically create a container, let's give a name. Let's just call it intentional touch. Like if one or the other of you says, "Hey, would you like to do intentional touch?" or give it another name if you like, but it's just clear that it is what it is. And it's super important if you do that, that you don't afterwards make a move towards sex, because then that association will be there. And any time in the future that one of you brings up intentional touch, that possibility will be lurking and restrict how often the answer is yes for both of you. So it's very important to keep it completely separate, but have this available. And honestly, if this is something that you enjoy, yes, start with the forearm. And if you both want to, you can include the face. You could even include legs. You could have, all, anything that you can access when you're wearing a bathing suit, any available skin. Like you can expand this. I'm going way too far just because of the context of this conversation, but to really calibrate it for the next 2 or 3 months just with forearms. But I'm just saying that you can see that this opens up I would call this non-sexual affection. Like this doesn't have an erotic energy, it just has a sensual energy.
With a shift in the thinking part of it, because you're just trying to be very grounded and calm and what feels good for me. And it takes away, then to me, then it's like takes away all the anxiety and like all of the different stories we go down. Is the other person going to be okay? So yeah, I love that exercise. Thank you.
You're welcome. And also that in this instance, when you're touching, EJ's only job is to enjoy it. It's because that can also be very confronting for a man or a woman to just receive the touch and not just like take your partner's hand and start touching them also. Like giving is a role with a lot of growth, and receiving is a role with a lot of growth as well. And I recommend, if you make this something that you do on a regular basis, whatever regular basis turns out to be, that you also have a practice, not necessarily immediately afterwards, maybe the two of you would, but you also like the next day could say, how was that for you? Is there anything you'd want to change about it? So that you stay in contact and let it be not a static strategy, but an evolving, living one that includes wherever your hearts and minds and bodies are throughout your time together. Well, I'd love to know what your takeaway is today. I'll start with you, EJ.
I'm just I'm just crazy about Tara. I love her so much. I love her so much, and just having like just sitting here, just kind of doing us feels so good. I love the look in her eyes. I love um I love to care for her. I love to feel cared for. It just feels, I feel very calm. I don't always like, I think I emanate calmness. I don't always or even frequently feel calm.
Mm,
And so I feel very like calm right now. I feel very safe, which is interesting in the context of like, we in our relationship talk so much about emotional safety, and I'm rarely thinking about my own. I'm almost always thinking about hers.
Mm.
And this felt like I was in the mix.
absolutely. And I think that's such an important thing that when one person is in crisis, there's one dynamic.
Mhm.
I'm just saying in crisis in a I mean, I don't mean to be casual, but just to be
Yeah.
efficient. And part of emerging into healthy erotic intimacy includes coming out, neither of you being in the caretaker role,
Mhm.
moving into the collaborator roles. And so that's obviously not some flip to switch, it's a emerging adjustment. And I think the two of you just did so beautifully in that regard. What are
Mhm.
you taking from this, Tara?
I'm taking, so as we've been sitting here, like our dog is under our feet and he's had the worst gas, right? And I'm just like, this is, I'm like, but this is our life. Like it is so rare where we even get to have more than 10 minutes together. And so I'm like laughing a little inside, like, this is our life, right? We have our children. As soon as we get off this, we'll be off to the races doing all these things. Um, but that even though we might only have this hour or our 20 minutes in the morning, that like we must really love each other a lot because it means so much. That I'm not resigned in our life whatsoever. I'm not resigned in our intimacy or in my healing from my own childhood sexual trauma, but I'm accepting that this is our life right now and that, the more experiences we have together, even this one, like it's okay. Like and maybe a trust that it will be okay instead of that flight, fight, freeze that I've been in for so long. That like, yeah, it's just a journey. And so not right. We have so many couples that come in like, when are we gonna start having more sex? When are we gonna? I was like, Neil, I wish I could tell you that. Embracing the journey, embracing the journey with a
Okay.
very special, amazing. He's in my phone as my favorite human because he really is my favorite human.
That's so beautiful. Okay, well, we talked about having this session and then the two of you going through the Aligned and Hot Marriage program. And I want to say something very clearly to the two of you, as well as anyone listening, which is actually, I have a testimonial that I think is on the page from a woman who she and her husband went through the program, and she said, the program doesn't really talk that much about sex and sensuality, but as a result of more closeness and connection, I have so much more desire for my husband. So I want to be clear that the program is not about sexual positions, it's not about sexual scripts about how to initiate sex. It's about how, either on your own or for anyone who wants to do the live coaching version, it's how to create the space with one another to be uncompromising in what you share in a way that naturally creates more connection, ultimately more fire, but it's through being more you. Because when we hold back parts of ourselves, and then we get to the bedroom or wherever it is that sex is going to happen, we just don't have the capacity to bring all of ourselves to the bedroom and be fully expressed and present in the way that's essential for good sex if in our day-to-day interactions there's so much of ourselves that we're holding back for any number of reasons. So I just want to be clear, it's not, it's a course that enhances sex, but it's not about sex.
I like that. I love that. That's just so like where our hearts are. And I knew when we had you on our podcast, like, yeah, like this feels really like kind of where we really want to go. And we're ready to definitely spend and prioritize our relationship, however that looks, to be able to go through and just become more connected.
Well, thank you both so much for being exactly who you are with one another, with the world, and on the Intimate Marriage podcast with me. I'll include links to your counseling center. Anything you want to say about that that will be in the show notes?
I mean, just this is sort of who we are, that we do have like an expertise in working with couples and individuals, but really at our heart, we really care about helping couples, and we care about, healing ourselves in order to make this world a better place. Like that is really at the heart of our mission. And so, if anyone's curious about our podcast, just hearing us talk more, or our, what all we're doing at our center retreats and stuff like that, they can just, go to our website and check it out, and our social media.
Excellent. And I'll also link to the episode where you interviewed me because I feel like that created a whole context for this
Absolutely.
conversation.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. And I look forward to having you back after you've been through the program and you've done some dyads with one another, and intentional touch may become part of your repertoire.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you,
so
Alexandra.
much, Alexandra. You're amazing in the way your voices and just the safety that you bring over Zoom even. Like I'm sure your work with couples is absolutely phenomenal. So thank you for you, really.
Thank you.